Hi guys, today we are going to expand our knowledge of factoring a little bit. So I know we taught you how to factor out the GCF of an expression. And then we also did a little bit with multiplying binomials last week. So when you're told to factor a trinomial, you're going to kind of do the opposite of multiplying two binomials together. So remember, a trinomial, try right there, means you have three terms. So Mrs. Stoltz, who's kind of went over what it means for a trinomial to be in standard form. And that is what we're looking at right here. So in standard form, remember your exponents go from highest to lowest. So my exponents here, the first one is 2, the next one is 1, and the last one doesn't have any x at all, so really that's x to the 0. So we know that our exponents are in order from greatest to least. The coefficient of the x squared is a. Hopefully you can see that right here. The coefficient of your x is b, and the constant is c. I always remember that, c for constant. And that just means a number without a variable. So they go in alphabetical order once it is in standard form. So if we take a look at this green example here, x squared plus 3x plus 5, first thing you want to ask yourself is it in standard form? See, my exponents are 2, 1, and then 0, so it is definitely in standard form. And then I want to make sure I can identify what my a is, what my b is, and what my c is. So since there is no coefficient on the x squared, we know that there is really a 1 there. It's just not necessary to write it, so my a is 1. B is the middle term, so the coefficient there is 3. And c again for constant, so that is 5. Looking at the blue example, we have negative 2x plus 4 plus x squared. So again, first thing, make sure it is in standard form. So my exponents go 1, 0, 2. Uh-oh, those are not in order from least to greatest. So the first thing we need to do here is rewrite this so that the x squared comes first. Now if we look at our exponents, it goes 2, 1, 0. So now it is in standard form. So now I can identify my a value, which is 1, my b value, which is negative 2, and my c value, which is 4. Now for our purposes, our a value will always be 1, but we'll get to that in a minute. So now looking at some other examples, okay? So I'm going to show you two different methods today. For the first method, again, first things first, always make sure that it is in standard form. So again, ax squared plus bx plus c. When it is in standard form, the first method, you want to pay very close attention to your b term, which is in the middle, and your c term, which should be last once it is in standard form. And your goal is to figure out what two numbers are going to multiply to the c term, but at the same time, add to your b term. So the way I do this is I think about, okay, I know I need to multiply to 20. So I think of all the possibilities of numbers that multiply to 20. So 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. And then I go down my list and I add them together to see what happens. 1 plus 20 equals 21. Well, that is not 9, so those are not going to work. 2 plus 10 is 12. Well, 12 is not equal to 9, so that does not work. If I try 4 plus 5, well, I get 10. So that means my answers are 4 and 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write two factors or two binomials. They both are going to start with x. And then we found our numbers to work to be 4 and 5, because again, 4 times 5 multiplies to 20, and 4 plus 5 adds to 9. So this would be the factors for the trinomial x squared plus 9x plus 20. Now, in order to check this, you can do what we learned last week and multiply a binomial by a binomial. So if I multiply these out, x times x is x squared, x times 5 is 5x, 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 5 is 20. And then you have like terms here that we can combine. 5x plus 4x is 9x. And you can see that the trinomial you are left with is the one that you began with. So that's how you know you did it correctly. So that is method number 1. Multiply to your C and add to your B. Method number 2 is something called the X method. And again, you can choose whichever method is easier for you. I tend to favor the X method because this will work when we get into some harder trinomials, where it might not be quite as easy to do method number 1. So again, first thing, always make sure it is in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So with the X method, what you're going to do is you're going to draw a big X, which I have here, big enough that you can write in all 4 sections that are there. And in the top part of the X, you're going to take your A, and you're going to multiply it by your C. So whatever A times C is. Now again, I said in this case, our A will always be 1. So really it's just C in the top. But again, I'm going to show you the whole process. That way, when A is no longer 1, you still know what you're doing. That A is also the denominator on each side of the X. And then I always say B for bottom. So in the bottom of the X, you're going to put your B value. And just like we talked about before with method 1, you're going to multiply to this top, and you're going to add to the bottom. And that's where these numbers on the side come from. The 2 numbers that multiply to your top and add to the bottom. And whatever those numbers are the 2 numbers that end up in your factors. So let me show you an example with some actual numbers so this makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so here I have x squared plus 9x plus 20. This is the same one that we've already done, just so you can kind of see the process after already knowing the answer. So you draw a big X. Again, I'm going to label out my A is 1, my B is 9, and my C is 20. So just remember, up top here is A times C. So 1 times 20 is 20. The denominators on each side is your A. So these are both 1. This is over A, over A. And then remember, B goes in the bottom. So my B in this case is 9. So we want to multiply to the top because you had to multiply A and C to get that. And we want to add to the bottom. So typically I would do the same thing that I've already done. I would list out my factors of 20. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. And I would test them all, which we just did. So to save some time, we know it's got to be 4 and 5. So those are my numerators. So when I go to write my 2 factors, the denominator on the side is your coefficient of x. So in this case, again, it's always going to be 1. So 1x, which you could also write as x if you wanted to. And then we write the numerators. So this was 4, a positive 4, so I'm going to write plus 4. On the other side, we had a positive 5, so I'm going to write plus 5. And again, you don't need that 1 in front of the x. When the coefficient is 1, you don't need to write it. So you could also just write it as the quantity of x plus 4 and then the quantity of x plus 5. So your factors are x plus 4, x plus 5. All right, here is another example, and I will show you both methods. So method number 1, remember, always make sure it's in standard form, regardless of what method you're doing, which this is. x squared minus 4x minus 12. Excuse me. So method 1, remember you're going to multiply to this last term, your constant, and you're going to add to this middle term. Notice I underlined the sign in front of it as well. So if you're subtracting, that means I'm adding to a negative 4, and I'm multiplying to a negative 12. So I'm going to list out my factors. 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. And then I'm going to test these to see if I can add up to a negative 4. Now you might be saying, but Mrs. Strauss, we need to multiply to a negative 12. You're right. So that means I could have negative 1 times 12, or I could have 1 times negative 12. I could have negative 2 times 6, or I could have 2 times negative 6. I could have negative 3 times 4, or I could have 3 times negative 4. And these are all possibilities that we need to check. So I'm going to start adding to see if these work. Negative 1 plus 12 equals 11. Well, that is not negative 4, so that is not my goal. Then I have negative 2 plus 6. That gives me 4. Ah, that's close, but it's not a negative 4. I need a negative 4. Negative 3 plus 4 equals 1. Well, that's definitely not negative 4, so that's not my option. And then continue down the list. 1 plus negative 12 equals negative 11. Nope. 2 plus negative 6 equals negative 4. Yes, that's it. That's what I need. Okay, so when we go to write our factors, again, because when you multiply it back out, you need x squared, we know it's going to be x and x. The 2 was positive, so it's going to be plus 2. The 6 was negative, so it's going to be minus 6. And that is going to be my answer. And again, you can FOIL that back out to double check it. If we are trying to check this, we would get x squared minus 6x plus 2x minus 12. Combine your like terms, so you get x squared minus 4x minus 12, which does match what we started with, so we know we are correct. With method number 2, we're using the x method. So in the top, we do a times c, so 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. B for bottom, so my b is negative 4. And then my sides are always over a, which is 1 in this case. And same thing, we're going to multiply to negative 12, and we're going to add to negative 4. So we just did all the possibilities on method 1. So I'm going to take those just so I don't waste your time doing them all again. And we found out that 2 and negative 6 multiply to give us negative 12 and add to give us negative 4. So again, I'm going to write my factors out. The denominator on each side goes with the x, so that's 1. The 2 was positive, so plus 2. The 6 was negative, so minus 6. Or again, you could rewrite it without the 1 because we know we do not need to write that when the coefficient is 1. So you could write it either of these two ways. And again, when you multiply it back out, you will see that it matches. Let's look at one more example together. So first things first, make sure that it is in standard form. So I've got 18 plus x squared minus 11x. Is that one in standard form? Definitely not. So we need to rewrite this so that my x squared term is first, my x term is in the middle, and my constant is last. Okay, so I have shown you method 1 the first way every single time. I'll show you method 2 for the first time in case you're somebody that prefers method 2. So in method 2, again, we have our x, and the top is a times c. So 1 times 18, which is 18. B for the bottom, so negative 11. And then always over a, which again is 1. So I need to multiply to 18, but at the same time I need to add to negative 11. So I need to find two numbers that will multiply to 18. So I'm going to list out all my possibilities. And then I need to find one that's going to add to negative 11. So if I try to add 1 and 18, I get 19. Nope, no good. I need negative 11. If I add 2 and 9, I get 11. Sorry, I need negative 11, so still no good. 3 plus 6 gives me 9, which is not negative 11. So I've exhausted all my options. However, if you think about it, a negative number times a negative number will also give me a positive number. So I could also have negative 1 times negative 18 and still get 18. I could have negative 2 times negative 9 and get get 18. And I could do negative 3 multiplied by negative 6 and still get positive 18. So really I do have other options. So let me try to add these to see if I can get to negative 11. Negative 1 plus negative 18 is negative 19. Still not gonna work. Negative 2 plus negative 9 gives me negative 11. That's it. That's what I need. So that means my numerators will be negative 2 and negative 9. So when I go to write my factors, again, the denominator goes with x, so 1x, or again, you could just write it as x, personal preference. It'll be good either way. And then the numerators are what goes next. So I had a negative 2, so this is going to be minus 2. And I have a negative 9, so this is going to be minus 9. And again, you can write your answer either one of these two ways. If you're trying to do method number 1, let me rewrite our trinomial here. Remember, again, you look like you're multiplying to c here and adding to b. So again, I went through all the possibilities underneath method 2, and we found that to be negative 2 and negative 9. So instead of wasting your time doing it all again, we'll just take it from that. And we found our options to be negative 2, so minus 2, and negative 9, so minus 9. And again, you can always check this. So if I try to multiply these back out, x times x is x squared. X times negative 9 is negative 9x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 9 is 18. Combine your like terms you have here in the middle to get negative 11x. And sure enough, the product matches what you started with. So you know it is correct. So again, either one of these methods work. It's up to you which one you want to use. If you have any further questions or need some further help, don't be afraid to jump into any of our office hours or reach out via email. I hope you guys are doing well. Have a great day.